Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
From time to time, I talk about police and towing because I used to work driving a tow truck years ago when I was in high school, and the year after I got out of high school. Drove a tow truck for the city of Birmingham. And a lot of that business was as a result of phone calls from the police department. Police department would call the gas station and say, hey guys, we got a wrecked vehicle over here, come get it. And whenever somebody was in an accident and the police said, do you need a tow truck? They'd call us. We had the contract. So those contracts can be lucrative. And there's cities like Detroit where there are problems because they are so lucrative that people who drive tow trucks are tempted to do favors, shall we say, for the police in an attempt to get the contract or to get on the list of contractors for the city towing. And we have a problem now from the Detroit Free Press, the paper I delivered as a young man. Joe Gillen wrote the story, and Patriot sent it to me, about a former Hamtramck police officer arrested in a towing scandal. And this is amazing. It involves the feds. And Hamtramck is a small town that's completely encompassed by Detroit. It does border on Highland Park also, but Highland Park and Hamtramck are surrounded by Detroit. So it's Detroit all the way around. A former Hamtramck police officer is arrested and is facing a federal bribery charge in connection with an ongoing corruption investigation involving the towing industry. It also involves the Detroit Police Department and a former Detroit councilman. According to the criminal complaint recently unsealed in federal court, this man provided sensitive law enforcement information in 2019 to someone in the towing industry in exchange for money and a 2013 Chevrolet Equinox. He traded a used car, they say. The towing company businessman who was working with the FBI asked the man who got arrested to use a law enforcement database to identify cars that he said could be following him and his tow truck. He told the man who got arrested a white Subaru was following him and could be part of a police internal affairs investigation. So there's an undercover officer dealing with this man, and he says, I think I'm being followed. Can you check to see who's following me? They might be undercover cops. So the man who got arrested is 60 years old, lives in St. Clair Shores. He's accused of running searches through the law enforcement database with the help of another unidentified employee at the Hamtramck Police Department. During a meeting with the towing businessman and an undercover federal agent in December, the man who got arrested said the tower was paranoid, according to court records. During the same meeting, the man who got arrested also discussed a scheme to transport out-of-state abandoned cars to Michigan for resale. The undercover agent was posing as a used car dealership owner. And yes, the target of the investigation called the undercover cop paranoid. Perhaps you'd be doing better in your life if you were a little more paranoid yourself. So, according to the criminal complaint, the man who got arrested talked about other officers who were making money in all kind of ways, including by chopping cars. But when asked what he meant, he says, I don't know nothing. So they're chopping cars, but I don't know nothing. He then left the Hamtramck Police Department in 2020. He appeared Thursday in federal court downtown, standing before U.S. Magistrate Judge Kimberly Altman in handcuffs, wearing a blue hooded sweatshirt and a light-colored set of work pants. Now apparently we're concerned about the style of what they wear. He acknowledged receiving the criminal complaint and was appointed an attorney, released on a $10,000 unsecured bond in order to turn in his 6 registered firearms and his concealed pistol license. His next court date is March 24th. The charges carry a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. But they also alleged in the story that he had suggested that if he was given certain things, money, favors, and so on, that he could set somebody up with a little help getting that towing contract. The towing contract's quite lucrative, you know. And people are making all kinds of money, chopping cars. I don't know nothing, but, you know. But the interesting thing is it's a former Hamtramck police officer. And apparently he left the Hamtramck police and was planning on going to another department, but that never happened. But that played into the story because he suggested to the undercover person he's dealing with that he could, when he got there, steer some towing contracts. And those towing contracts have been the subject of several different federal cases happening in southeastern Michigan. And the stories are all over the news about what happens if you go downtown and park your car someplace and it gets towed. It's an amazing ordeal to try to get your car back, and it's going to cost you a fortune. And that fortune, of course, is profit for the towing company. And of course, if it's being kicked back to somebody else, that's a problem. And it also drives up costs, by the way, which is another economic issue we often don't discuss. But the towing situation in Detroit and southeastern Michigan and a lot of major cities is problematic. And people know that they can make tons of money on this. And there's someone who makes the decision about where that contract goes. And that person is just some lowly bureaucrat who says, oh, I think we should give it to this person or give it to that person, or make a list, put them on the list, we'll rotate through the list, something like that. But the point is that someone makes that decision, and a little bit of money might go a long way in convincing that person to put your name on that list or higher up the list, or actually put you on the list to keep other people off the list. I've heard of that too. So the allegation here is that the former Hamtramck police officer left the Hamtramck force, was talking to a guy about stuff they could do together, including, I can steer these contracts to you in exchange for some stuff. By the way, my daughter needs a car. I saw one story which suggested that he had said that. My daughter needs a car. And somehow she came up with a car pretty quickly thereafter. A used car, but a car nonetheless. So it's not a good thing, but we hear about these stories. And one of my favorite stories is there was a city councilwoman in Detroit couple years ago, got busted for some kind of bribery issue. And they were basically accused of trying to buy her vote on the city council. And the city council was going to award a sludge hauling contract, which apparently is a very, very large contract, a huge contract. And the allegation was that she steered this contract that when you looked at the dollar value of it was just all zeros and commas, following a number, but I mean, it was big number, huge number. And the allegation was that she'd taken an $8,000 bribe to steer that contract. And most people who heard that story looked at it and said, wait a second, she deserves to go to jail for being bad at math. Who steers a contract this big for this much money, right? There's a problem there. But she wound up going to prison, and she's out now, but that happens. And unfortunately, a lot of big cities have issues like this, and Detroit and Hamtramck and Highland Park even have had these kinds of issues as well, and it's very sad to hear about them. But people think of me when they see a tow truck in a news story because they know I drove a tow truck when I was in high school. So I had a lot of fun driving the tow truck, a lot of fun, but we weren't involved in any scandals involving that contract. In fact, I should, for the sake of clarification, because one or two people would know this, but there was another gas station at the time in Birmingham called Bob Adams Shell. And Bob Adams Shell and the gas station I worked at actually alternated on the contract. So we had it 6 months, they had it 6 months. And it literally went from month to month. So, we had 1 month, Bob Adams had the next. We had the next, Bob Adams had the next. But we were basically the only two games in town. Both went to the city of Birmingham, so we liked that towing contract. And they said, well, how about this? You guys split it. And we said, what are we going to do? Alternate? They said, well, we'll alternate months, make it easier for the dispatcher to keep track of. So January is you guys, February is you guys, back to you guys in March, and so on. So that's how it worked out. So Patriot, thanks for sending the story. Joe Gillen wrote it for the Detroit Free Press. Former Hamtramck police officer arrested in towing scandal. He's got a court date coming up. We'll see what happens to him. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Reading is one form of escape. Running for your life is another.